record. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Okay, so that was very interesting. You know why? Because
that was the Marriage with Joy.
Yeah, that was the intro to Marriage with Joy, which is my other podcast.
We're going to need a little redo.
You know something? It is so perfect for today's show. Now, I'm going to do our intro for Divorce with Integrity. That was just too funny. I love it. Okay, here we go again.
I confuse you.
Sorry.
I'm so happy. Yes, right. We're going from Divorce with Integrity to Marriage with Joy. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Divorce sucks. Welcome to Divorce with Integrity. This is the most important and open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of moving from matrimony to acrimony to harmony. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Now, how can I make the categorical statement that the thousands, actually tens of thousands now, of people who have tuned in to watch and listen and learn with us about Divorce with Integrity are all good looking? How can I make that statement? Because if you did tune in consciously and conscientiously listen to Divorce with Integrity with our amazing, wonderful Este and our fabulous Laurie McDermott and your humble host, Barry Shore, it means you're always looking for and finding the good in life. That's the definition of a good looking person, looking for and finding the good in life. And that's really what Divorce with Integrity is about. It's that process of moving from a place where you thought you were really living in integrity and things were just not there. There was an edge, there was something off. And then when you understood that either you deep dive back in and cement that relationship and create a better one, or find an exit that really is beneficial to all the parties involved. If it's just two people, then both parties are going to benefit. And if it's a family, whether it's one child, 5 children, 10 children, it doesn't matter. It's done with integrity, and therefore you become a channel of goodness, a child of God, I say. And that's really what this podcast is about and has been about for the past 14 years. I'm going to go a quick backstory and then hand it over to wonderful Este and Laurie again. The backstory is actually quite interesting, in my opinion. I was discussing with this wonderful being, Este Rand, who is a remarkably successful business person, remarkably successful person. And her story, her personal story, is also fascinating in that she was married to happily for apparently some number of years, let's say 7 years happily and 7 years less so. And in the course of that marriage, gave birth to 5 children. I think it's 5, maybe 6. He has 5 children. And that recognized at some point that the marriage wasn't going to continue. There was not just a crack, it was a fissure. It was, and that's Fissure. And that it was not able to be bridged or healed because both parties weren't moving together forward. And that divorce was the alternative. Because I've been taught by Laurie. And the result of that is that Este was able to internalize, utilize, and leverage the process of moving from that acrimonious state, that state of disbelief and upset even, into a place of integrity for herself, her children, even her ex, and all the people around her. That's what happened when she and I were discussing business, and she mentioned about her divorce, and she mentioned these words that she was working on divorce with integrity. And I said, oh my gosh, what an amazing idea. What a purposeful, powerful, positive, pleasant title for a podcast that must be out there because so many people are experiencing this and want to live in integrity. She says, okay, let's do it, because she's a woman of action, as is our beloved, amazing, wonderful Laurie McDermott. Her story is also heart-wrenching, and yet the heart was put back in, because she went from a place of almost right on the edge, about to have it split right open and cause all kinds of stuff, and then find a way to heal. And not only heal for herself and her husband and her children, but for many, many others, because she's what she's been through and what goes through. She's called the wife expert. And then there's me. Okay, just a regular guy. I'm humbled and honored to be here with these two remarkable beings and to discuss this idea of divorce with integrity, life with integrity. I am honored, blessed to tell you that I've been married to the same woman for 45 years. And in the course of those 45 years, have we gone through peaks and valleys and rivers and mountains and impossible situations? Absolutely. And were we ever on the edge? Hello, it's called life. So yes, I know something of the trials and tribulations of such. And before I ask wonderful Este and wonderful Laurie to begin discussing our situation, today is a uniquely important podcast. It is our swan song. Now, swan song is a great idea, mostly from theater. So if you're familiar with it, you'll say, okay, I've heard of it, but what is it? I had to look it up myself to really get the origins of it. I've known it almost all my life. I happen to be a theater goer. I mean, talking about live theater. And I've actually been involved in live theater for a number of years when I was younger. Oh, you'll like this, Laurie, because Laurie was involved in, was it Second City? Or
Yes.
improvisation,
Yes.
such, which
Yep.
Second City, one of the greatest in the world. I just did little things, but theater is something remarkable. It's so intimate because you're dealing right there with people, as opposed to something on film, which a great medium. It's not theater in the true sense. And swan song is apparently in great operas and other types of situations going back to ancient times. The swan is it's a big white bird, as everybody knows, sometimes even a black swan. Oh my God, just realized we had a black swan event recently. It's called COVID. It caused lockdown. It's called a black swan event. Happens once every 100 years or so. But the white swans have a great song and they sing. And apparently they sing the greatest song just before they die. So it's called Going Out in Style. You don't just go out and say, that's it, I'm dead. You go out with a song in your heart. And that's what we're doing. And this device has been used throughout the millennia by Plato, by Aristotle, by Euripides. That's a great story from the Marx Brothers. Cicero, Shakespeare. So we're going to give our swan song. You're going to hear great ideas, great insights, maybe even some singing from Este and Laurie. So what I'm going to do with their permission, actually without their permission, is I'm going to just do a segue, S-E-G-U-E. Isn't that a great word? We all use it, but it's spelled S-E-G-U-E. I'm going to do a segue. We'll go first to wonderful Este, who was my partner, the first partner in building the Divorce with Integrity podcast and even the idea of it. And we brought in a wonderful fellow, Joe Applebaum, who also has lived his life in integrity because of the divorce. He also was married for years. I think has at least 5 children and was in a very strange relationship and actually now is beyond it and lives in a world that he wasn't capable of doing before. He's living in integrity. He's actually reformatted and reshaped his entire physical being. I only know this because he mentioned it, so I'm not telling a secret, that he weighed in excess of several hundred pounds, and it was uncomfortable for him mentally, physically, spiritually. And only when he was really able, didn't realize that part of the difficulty he was facing because of the marriage, and he got through it, and he was able to live in integrity. He's now a very slim version of what he was, because that's where he wants to be. That's where he needs to be. That's where he lives in integrity, and he's doing such good work in the world. Again, the same thing for Este and for Laurie, not too much their weight. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, but their physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So look at this. If you're watching this, you get a big opportunity, because you're looking at two beautiful women, and then you got me. And you're also looking at one who is curly and one who is straight hair. Then you have me, no hair. But that's okay, because we're going to go right to Este. Este, that was a long-winded introduction to you, to say, I'm asking you, because we get a lot of, as I said, emails and a lot of questions for Este. Este, how is it? You had years of marriage. You were deeply involved. You seemed like, to the outside world, didn't seem like everything was just, excuse the expression, hunky-dory, whatever that means. We can look that up. And then, but you realized inside that it wasn't correct. So how did you make the transition from something that looked correct, with 5 children, a particular way of life, to recognizing that there needed to be a shift in your life, and it was going to be called divorce?
So I'll remind you, I had really hoped up until I got served papers that we could fix it. I knew there needed to be a change. I knew that the status quo couldn't continue. I wasn't able to be a mother to my children. My ex wasn't able to become who he needed to be. And it was just an awful situation. I knew something had to change. My deepest desire was that it would change in a way that would allow us to stay together, but I knew it had to change. And when I unequivocally, with no other option, pushed for change, my ex filed for divorce. So I had pushed for separation. We had been through therapy for a number of years. We had known change needed to happen for a while, and it got worse and worse, and change wasn't happening, got worse and worse and worse and worse. And we got to the point where the last option was really just separation, right? To see if we could make it work that way, which we agreed to, speaking to rabbis and community leaders and top therapists and all the things. And then a few weeks into our separation, I was served divorce papers. That
So
is actually how I got divorced.
is that, and I'm asking you, and if I'm invading private space, you'll tell me,
Yeah.
was it a shock?
Yeah.
So did you feel, and I'm using a big word, did you feel betrayed?
No, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt clear, because I was trying to save something that couldn't be saved. And I would have probably spent another year or two playing in that like separation, nesting, more therapy game if he hadn't done that. Now, I happen to think he was getting terrible advice from people. They told him I was hiding millions of dollars. He has to lock my assets. That's what those papers were filed. They were filed to lock my assets. They weren't filed as a statement of, all right, well, I guess we've tried to make this work and now we can't. Like, that's not what happened. It was like, I got a message at the same time as the papers were filed along the lines of, we don't really have to do anything about this. You can still work things out. I'm just doing this to protect the kids. I'm like, it doesn't protect the kids from anything. It locks my assets. It says I can't take the kids out of the country. Where was I going? This is April of 2020. No one could leave the country. I wasn't going anywhere. What divorce papers do, they do 2 things. They don't allow either parent to take the kids out of the country, and it locks your assets. That's all the filing does. And it starts the process, obviously. And at the time, I think he was just getting terrible advice. And people said, like, and there was a lot of fear, and I'm no blame, right? And you know what? I could be wrong. This is my understanding of the situation. He might tell you a completely different story. In divorce, there's always 3 versions: his, hers, and the truth, right? I can't tell you. I can tell you this is my perspective. That's my perspective. That when he filed, even he may not have meant it to be permanent if he meant the text that he sent me as I was served the papers. Yeah, at the same time. But for me, I had been pushing for years for him to go and step into the person he needed to become, and he wasn't. And for him to file those papers to lock my assets just to make sure that he wouldn't have to go and step up and get his shit together. And that was my clarity. There was nothing else I could do.
So I'm going to ask you two questions. One of them is, first of all, did you have assets to be locked up?
Not as much as he thought.
Okay, fair enough. And I can hear this from the reverse more than this. In other words, a man trying to lock up the assets
Yeah,
of
that's
a
where it
woman.
usually happens.
I think Laurie's going to chime in on this. It's more often that the wife or the woman is trying to lock up the assets of the man. Because generally speaking, I may be wrong in this today's world, I don't know, that the man in the marriage, and we're talking about a marriage between man and a woman, and I don't care what two men call
The
themselves.
masculine polarity and the feminine polarity. Yes. I stepped into the masculine polarity role, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to. And I felt forced to keep a roof over our head. And I didn't like it. And it made me more and more miserable and more out of alignment. And through therapy and through intervention from community leaders, we were trying to shift the polarities that he would step into the masculine role. And his locking my assets to me was the final clarity that he was just refusing.
Okay,
Like, nope.
My other question is, and I again, being very direct with you, I like what you said because I think it's reality of life. There's my version, his version, and the truth. Yeah. And so we don't know because we're getting your version, obviously.
We have no idea.
Yeah, but the truth is that at the moment, and this is the good news, the truth at the moment is that you are in a place where you can be calm, where you can be beneficial for your children, where you can be beneficial for your clients, where you can have no fear of someone trying to do something to you that's not in your vision of yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, it is. I'm in a much better place now.
Good for you. Good for you. Wonderful, Laurie. Without delving deeply into your story, unless you want to tell people.
I'm good.
But what you do now is quite remarkable because you've been through deep pain and you've utilized that pain as a lever to help other people, especially women who are in the throes of divorce or thinking of divorce, because I'm going to say this as a categorical statement. Cancer affects a human being and it affects their physical, mental, and spiritual world. And it's a killer. In my humble opinion, so is the big D, divorce. I think it's a killer. It certainly kills situations, unless, of course, it can be used as a springboard. So you're seeing and talking to women who are mostly affluent or they come from affluent surroundings. They themselves may not be affluent, but they come from affluent surroundings. And now they're in a position where either the husband is saying, I think it's time for us not to be together, or the woman saying, I think it's time for us not to be together. Which is more common in your situation, the people you're working with and helping?
Well, it's more common for the woman to reach out to me after the man has left or is thinking about leaving, but it's not just affluent people. I get people who work at Walmart and don't have some teeth. So I kind of cross all boundaries. And when I do get a client like that, I interview them and I give them free service, but they have to be interviewed. So I use that to my advantage and I interview them, and it goes on my private membership site where people can see those and learn from that because they're good examples and they get free coaching from me. But it's common both ways, but the men, if they've been left by the woman, they don't reach out because there's a little bit of, I'm a man, I can get through this, how they've been taught. But the men that do reach out to me and say, I don't know what to do, she left, blah, 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 I can get their wives home faster than I can get a husband home with a wife. And I think that's the masculine and feminine. I work with a lot of feminine men who took on the role of the feminine, but their wife became the man and was just so frustrated. They were doing anything and just left. And they're just like, what happened? And it's like, well, you became the girl. So I teach men how to become men. To be honest with you, my coaching calls, I teach men to man up and get them to be strong and
I'm loving this. Right.
who they are.
Laurie, we should have met 4 years ago. I would have sent you my ex-husband.
I would have saved your marriage, my dear.
You might have.
I
Okay,
still
by the way,
meant to
again,
be.
you see,
it's
this is
great.
why
Yeah,
this
it wasn't just that, right? There are other pieces, and who knows, right? Who knows?
If you're ready, the teacher shows up when the student is ready. You
Right.
ready? You call me.
So I want to ask you a question specifically in what you said, because I love it. And that's why this show really is the swan song, because you swans are singing beautifully. You are just out there. This particular segment needs to be seen and shared by millions of people. You hear
I'll
that?
share it. I'll share it on my YouTube channel.
Right. The millions need to be hearing this, because I didn't even know this. I mean, I'm in love with Laurie for years now. We met in a wonderful way. She was interviewed by
Dennis Prager.
right. She was
He
interviewed by
loves me too. He
by-
interviewed me for that show, his show.
Right.
She's amazing. And he believes in marriage and he's a very conservative guy. Love him. So he had me on the show. We had a great time. And then you heard me on that. I'm supposed to go back.
yeah, and I reached out to you because I heard and I said, this is amazing. First of all, the story. We won't have to go into it now, but the point is that you've been through stuff and pain. And I'm loving right now what you're saying, because there is in the world today, and I see it more and more with younger people, there is a confusion of roles, as it were. Now, it doesn't mean that a man has to be, and a woman, it means that there's a confusion of roles in the ability to be giving and receiving. See, really, that's what it's about. Oftentimes, the channels, the twin channels, somehow are blocked. People can become givers, and then they get frustrated because it's so much giving, and I'm being taken advantage of, or receiving a lot, which makes someone into a taker oftentimes. And the ability for a marriage to create that unblocking of harmony of giving and receiving. I just love what you said about enabling men to man up and to step forward and to be who they need to be in terms of provider and head of a household, and still share that role with a woman. In other words, you can have two providers. Hello. You can still be sharing the household, two people, but there are roles that are male and female.
And when a man steps into the feminine role, it's oftentimes because the woman stepped into the masculine role. There can only be one man and one female in one marriage. You can't have two females and you can't have two males. Even in gay or the other people, there's
Right.
still a male role and there's still a female role. That's how this world works. We can't change it. This is how people get along. And when you realize that, because sometimes I have to be the man in our family, and I will, when it comes to the bills or accomplish things, my husband will be like, can you handle this? And I'll be like, okay, I got the man hat. Let me take care of it. And oftentimes, which I have to work on, if we're going to be physical and have sex together, I can't be walking around like a man because that's not attractive to him. I have to become the woman. And sometimes I'm very bossy all day. I got to take off my man cap and go into him like, hi. My greatest scene that I saw a long time ago was when Oprah Winfrey was with her husband, Stedman. And she's a beast of a woman, right?
I mean, who's
And
this?
Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey. I hope everybody's listening. Yes.
And she walks in and she's sitting with Stedman, her boyfriend. And she takes off her shoes and she leans back on the couch and she goes, how did I do? And I thought, she's becoming the woman and she's asking for his permission on how she did. She's how many billion-dollar woman, and she's asking Stedman, her boyfriend, who we only know about him through her. And he says, yeah, I think you did a good job. I like this. I didn't like this. And she was like, yeah. She was vulnerable and loving and caring and gave him the space to
Right.
take care of her. And that's what we need women to give that space to men so they feel they can accomplish something. I helped my woman. I feel good.
I'm crying tears of joy. Something
Right.
happened just last night. I'm going to tell you very quickly. We only have a few more minutes. Uh, really, that was just such a great scene. So my wife, thank God, is now she's taking supplements, B complex and things like that, and just okay. And she didn't do that for decades, but she's doing it now. So whenever she runs out of something, she leaves that empty bottle on my desk, which is her sign to me. Hello, go on wherever it is, Amazon, order it for me. Take care of me. And I love doing it. I mean, I'm telling you, when I'm typing in an order for her, I'm feeling so good. And she said, I want you, and she could do it. No, she wants me to take care of her. That's so wonderful. Such a great insight from both of you. And I want to tell you both how much I appreciate the time and the energy and the love and the caring that you have given over this past year plus when we've been doing this remarkable podcast. And again, thank God, we've touched thousands, tens of thousands of people who, just by the title, Divorce with Integrity, can that be? Well, the answer is yes. And you're hearing it from wonderful Este. You're hearing it from amazing Laurie. You're hearing it from me. And I've not been divorced, but I can tell you I've been close. And I can tell you a terrible story that each pulls my heart out. I have a son, one son, only child. He got married 6 years ago. Beautiful, wonderful. Wow. I love my daughter-in-law. I mean, I love her. I always wanted a daughter. And two fabulous boys, one's 6.5, one's 3.5. They're divorced. And I'm sorry to say it because it's going to be for eternity. He was the main driver of it. He was the one who caused it, in the sense that he didn't recognize truly what he had and was not able to maintain that responsibility. Because I think when it comes to it, if there is a word of divorce with integrity, or divorce that happens and you can't get pushed back or pull back or mend, it has to do with personal responsibility. And like you said, Laurie, that a man needs to stand up to be the man, not be feminine.
Barry, if I can just add something, because I had a chat with her, your son's wife, and it was a difficult call. And she didn't want to share with me what happened, or, she knew better and she didn't want this. So your son could have been in a position dealing with someone who was just a wall. And sometimes in life we have to be vulnerable. And when someone like me steps in to offer guidance, if the answer is no, stay away, it locks people up. And your son is your son, and you have been his influence, and he will carry that for his next relationship. He will learn from this past one, and he's a good man. And I know that because you're his dad. And
Well, and I think that to me is the segue to really the wrap of this, which is sometimes it is better to divorce than to try to force something to stay together that can't stay together then.
Mm-hmm.
So Laurie, yeah, maybe if we'd met 4 years ago, maybe you could have saved my marriage, but maybe you couldn't. And maybe if you'd saved it, I would be in a worse place. Who knows? We all have our unique journey. We have no idea. And I think that when it gets to a point, for whatever reason, again, for me, I literally had to be handed divorce papers to be willing to acknowledge that this didn't have a future. I wasn't, until that point. I have a video from a week prior to being handed those papers that had been filed 2 weeks before that, and I didn't know. It took the court 3 weeks then, beginning of COVID, to process things. It took them forever because no one was in anywhere. Papers had already been filed. I didn't know. There's a Zoom recording of me meeting with one of the rabbis who was intervening in our marriage. And he said to me, Este, is there a chance we can save this? How much of a chance is there? I said, there's still a chance. There was still like, I don't remember if it was like a 5% or a 1%.
It's 100.
But there was
It's
there was
100.
right. Any chance is a chance for 100% saving. I was still sitting there going, maybe we can. So I literally had to be handed divorce papers to recognize, no, apparently we can't. It's done. And it still took me years. Sometimes we can't. And when we can't, you do it with integrity because you live your whole life with integrity.
Right. But I will tell you, if anyone's listening who's been served divorce papers,
that you can correct it. You don't have to get divorced just because you're handed
papers. They don't mean anything.
I
Rip it
understand
up!
that. I don't mean, I meant for me, it was a final clarity, not that papers means at the end of a marriage. Yes, I understand that. And people get remarried after divorce too. We won't. But like, I understand that. I'm just
You
saying
never
for
know.
me, it was
Never
a
say
clarity.
never. Never say never. You have how many kids together? 5. That's a life that you can build back together. I would love to help you. So just put me in your pocket when you're ready.
Okay, I have to say to everybody, again, people are watching this from all over the world. So there are some nice little anecdotes here. One is that Este lives in Los Angeles and Laurie lives in greater Los Angeles. And over the course of time, it happens that Este and Laurie actually got a chance to meet each other.
Este is way taller than she looks.
Right. And I mean, they're different. You can't see it on the screen, heights and weights and all kinds of things, but they're different in height and such, but they got together. They got a chance to hug and to meet and such. And I'm happy to say that Laurie and I got a chance to meet because I was doing a show in Los Angeles and she drove up and we got a chance to hug and meet and such like that. So this podcast is more than just 3 beings on a screen and talk. This is the interaction of energies, of positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant energies that will literally go across time and space and envelop everybody that's listening with joy, with happiness, with peace and love. And again, personally, I can't even begin to express, even though I will, my thanks to both of you, to each of you, for investing your time, your energy, your caring, because we care about people. We care about making opportunities for people to recognize, there's always that chance. Go for it. Really live your life in such a way. Yeah, those papers, sometimes they can do it. Rip open your mind, rip open your heart and say, be vulnerable. Say, yes, I'm here. Let's see what we can do together.
Yep.
That's our swan song. It's a beautiful song. It is. Hello, yes, together we are singing the song of life. And on that wonderful note, I'm going to ask the 3 of us if we could do 2 things. Number 1, we do a group hug, which is not just us, but then develops all the thousands and thousands of people who will be watching this over time. And it'll tell people what hug stands for and give a blessing. So hug stands for heartfelt, unlimited giving. On the count of 3, my beautiful, bountiful, beloved beings. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And our blessing from Laurie, from Este, from Barry is go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Bye, everybody. Thank you.